biography here. Philip Harris was born in Hollywood, California. In spring 2017, he received his MFA in fiction from San Francisco State University. He currently lives in West Oakland, where he tells stories through his words, illustrations, and photographs, all while continuing his search for the perfect burrito. His work has appeared in Vogue UK, the Los Angeles Review, the Atticus Review, the Tusk, and Transfer. Philip is also the co-host and co-author of the weekly podcast Queers in Space. Find him at authorphilip.com.
I'm getting over a cold, so forgive my crackly voice. It's very much an honor to read alongside Jen, to co-feature with her. It's truly a blessing. I got my MFA in fiction writing, and my last semester here, I decided to just take a class for fun, so I took Imagining the Book with Barbara Tamash, and I had no idea what I was going to write because it was a poetry class, and I was inspired by Claudia Rankine's masterwork, Citizen, to collect and list the racist microaggressions that my Chicana mother has suffered her whole life, which I've been hearing about my whole life. And when I started doing that in the class, which Renee was in with me, through a workshop, and Evelyn, it sort of became clear that it was bigger than that I found myself at intersections that I was unexpected to find myself at, and I ended up writing something I was not expecting. And it was published! And as was Renee's from that same class.
Featured reader Renee in 2 weeks?
Come back and hear him read from The Planet of the Dead, which you should all purchase. Like, for real purchase, okay? Can you hear me if I stand here? Okay, because I don't want to be like, what's going on? How's it going? How's that? Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. I have 4 copies available right there for $15 each. I take cash and Venmo, and I will sign them. It is fully illustrated. Yeah.
Very beautiful pictures.
And I correct the typos in it by hand when I sign for you. I think I can get through most of it. We'll see. Okay. The flowers in my mother's name. Newport, California, spring break. I'm just about to hit puberty, just about to realize the difference I feel within me is something the rest of the world calls gay. What a dump.
It's a reading and a reading.
That's fine.
Yeah, turn.
My family has rented, for the week, a 2-story White House, 6 addresses from the beach. We're all sunburned. Sand is everywhere. The bedroom I share with my brother has glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. The shocking contrast between the bright heat and the relief of air conditioning. My mother and I are sitting on the Spanish tile deck out front. Blonde, blue-eyed people with scant body hair pass us on the way to the beach. Do you think she's cute? My mother asks, pointing to a People magazine with Gloria Estefan on the cover. Gloria. Glory. Survivor of a horrific bus accident. The perfect pop culture story. Coming out of the dark, the perfect comeback song. Gloria will sing Coming Out of the Dark at the American Music Awards. Everyone will stand for her. A standing ovation for the Cuban girl with dark hair and a thick accent. My mother waits for an answer. She's testing me. This will be one of several times my parents will casually ask me if I'm gay. She thinks I'm still deciding, that people can decide. And in this moment, she's making me decide whether or not Gloria Estefan, who looks like her, is beautiful. Or I should say, cute. If my prepubescent male mind is sexually attracted to a famous woman with a steel rod in her spine. The boys at school all talk about white girls with blonde hair and blue eyes, faces that turn red when infuriated. They say things like tight and pink. I don't know what to tell my mother. I don't want to disappoint her. I don't know what coming out means. There was no October 11th coming out day then. I am not like the other boys. I want to be like the other boys. I want to be around them and to feel them and touch them and feel them against my body. I don't yet know about systemic racism, internalized homophobia, heteronormativity, internalized racism, oppression, gender politics. I am a child. I want to be straight. I want to be like the other boys. No, I say, she has that ugly Mexican look. My mother's face drops. And what do you think I have? She asks. I don't know how to respond. A tear falls from her brown eyes. She gets up and goes into the house. I am alone, Gloria smiling out at me from the glossy cover of People magazine. Nana once told me she wanted to name my mother Melinda, which means dark, black, or honeysuckle. Her thought was that when spoken in Spanish, Melinda becomes mi linda, which means my beauty, my precious girl. My grandfather, who was murdered before my mother was 10, insisted on Sylvia, Sylvia Flores. Sylvia, meaning spirit of the wood, flores translating directly to flowers. My mother, the flower spirit of the wood. My parents got married in Papa Juan's backyard. Papa Juan, my great-uncle, my mother's uncle, Nana's brother, he hugged hard, his gold jewelry catching the sun as he handed me a $20 bill for my birthday. His smile was medicine for a lonely heart. The Catholic Church refused to marry my parents because my father was divorced with 2 other children already. Papa Juan said of course they could get married on the basketball court in the backyard. Tia Maggie, my aunt, my mother's oldest sister, Nana's oldest daughter, sang Day by Day from the Godspell soundtrack. I'm not sure many, if any, of my father's white family and friends had ever been to that part of Los Angeles before. The mariachi performed La Negra one more time by special request of the bride, the youngest of 3 girls, the one with the long straight hair, the skinny legs and the giant brown eyes, the flower spirit of the wood. You are the flower spirit of the wood. Your father is dead. Stories about his philandering, gigolo ways swirl around the house like loose flour. You only vaguely remember him, when your mother threw a skillet at him and told him to leave. You remember him standing on the porch waiting for a taxi, his suitcase in hand. Your mother, you, and your sisters had to leave, had to start over. You now live in Papa Juan's house. You share a twin bed with the sister just older than you. You and she will always have each other, will always remember. Your grandparents live in another bedroom. Your grandparents want you to be American. After all, that's why they came to this country, to get away from all that. They want you to speak English. They want you to go to American schools, but they don't speak English, so you are forced to speak Spanish with them. In the house, your life is a mixture of American and of Mexican cultures, the two never finding perfect peace with each other, each fighting for your mind y alma. Outside the house, America thinks you're exhausted, that you're okay because you're born here and speak fluent English. You will never have your own room. Someone will always want to share, and your name will always be complicated. Your father will always be a cad, even when they say your oldest son is just like him. You will date only white men because you truly believe there's a chance that any Mexican man you meet in Los Angeles might be related to you because of your father's promiscuity. You think he may have children all over the place whom he hasn't a clue exists. It's safer to date white men, and your sisters agree. You see your 2 older sisters marry white men, their flowers taken by families that aren't yours. When you marry a white man, you insist on keeping your flowers. You will not become his property. You will not hyphenate. You will not relegate your flowers to your middle name. You will add Harris to the flowers. Your last name will be Flores de Harris. Flowers of Harris. Harris meaning pet of Henry. Henry meaning ruler of the home. You will bring the spirit of the flowers and the wood to your house, making your new home beautiful, a piece of the past resting on the mantle of your future, a sign, a shout to God and the world of permanence. No one in your family does this with their name. You do it because superficially you know that if someone heard the name Sylvia Harris, they wouldn't think of a Mexican woman. It's not that you want them to think of a Mexican. It's just those few times you used Sylvia Harris, there were people, your husband's coworkers, your friends' spouses, who met you and blinked, pulling back their heads in surprise. And when you asked them what's wrong, they stammered and said, I didn't expect you to be so tall. You and your supervisor are good friends. You work under an office copying papers for the local school district. Your supervisor's husband greets you at a New Year's Eve party. His handshake is warm, his smile caring. I've heard so much about you, he says. I think it's so amazing that your husband accepts your kids as his own. Your kids, the children your white husband got a reverse vasectomy after having 2 previous children to have, are somewhere nearby. Your kids are fair like your husband, but dark-haired and dark-eyed like you. They look nothing like their father, especially to the casual observer. No, you say, placing your offense aside for another time, because at parties you must keep it together. They're definitely his kids too. You're at the grocery store with your 2 sons. One is 4, the other still an infant. It feels good to be out of the house. The baby has been crying, and the Southern California heat is only forgettable in the Lucky store down the street. In the checkout line, an old white woman standing behind you says, "Those are awfully cute children, and they're so well behaved." "Thank you," you say, smiling. "That family is awfully lucky to have you," the old white lady says. You don't correct her because it's easier just to keep moving. The IRS will audit you because your name appears differently in various places. You tell them that your full name does not fit on your driver's license, so the state of California thinks your last name is simply De Harris. Your expression of heritage literally does not fit on your main form of identifying yourself in the state in which you were born. The IRS will only let you off the hook if they put an AKA between Sylvia Harris and Sylvia Flores De Harris, and you agree to this. You're at a family party. A friend you've known since high school has brought his new wife. She is a snob who sniffs at the guacamole and requests Riesling when presented with margaritas. For a moment, you are cornered by her, and for the sake of your friendship with her husband, you do your best to converse. "You're so lucky," she says to you. "Excuse me," you ask? "You know, because you married up." Another offense to file away, another memory to replay over and over again, another reason. "No," you reply, "he did." You're in Houston visiting your husband's second child. The second child is a grown man now with a family all his own. You've known this second child since he was 8. He is kind to you, treats you with respect. You agree to these trips because your husband, the tall white man people think married you with 2 kids from a previous marriage, even though it's actually the other way around, feels like he doesn't know his second child very much. His first wife kept him from him, and your husband feels somehow like he wasn't there. It's important for your husband to build a relationship with the son he seemingly doesn't know. Your husband's second child has a child of his own, including a toddler. This toddler follows his mother, your stepdaughter-in-law, out into the garage, which faces the street. The garage door is open, and a neighbor walks up to your stepdaughter to say hello, your stepdaughter-in-law. You chase the toddler into the garage to make sure he's okay, and hear the neighbor say to his mother, "Oh, I didn't know you guys got a new nanny." You realize she's referring to you. You grab the toddler and go back into the house because you're afraid to hear what your stepdaughter-in-law says. You and your white husband are in Atlanta for a wedding. The daughter of one of your husband's fraternity brothers is getting married. You've never met her. You've met the fraternity brother. You and your husband go out for a bite to eat. Your husband stops on the sidewalk to take a phone call. You go into a restaurant, only casually observing that it's being filled only with white people. You ask how long the wait for 2 is, and the hostess says they have no room at the moment, that no tables will be open for a long time. You ask to use the bathroom, and the hostess begrudgingly lets you. When you return, you see your husband, oblivious to his white privilege, sitting at a table with a drink and a menu. "Wait, what?" you ask him. "They sat me right down," he replies. "I guess I'll take a drink. A little bit of wine would be fine."
Do you want wine or do you want water?
Water would be great.
Mimosas.
But do we have water? Thank you. So sorry. You're at a friend's mother's funeral. Your friend's relative has recently had a baby. You miss holding babies. You love the way they smell. You remember when your 2 sons were babies, how you loved to hold them, even when they were screaming. A boyfriend of one of your friend's relatives is sitting across the table from you. You make a joke saying to the baby, and you're asking yourself, "Who is this stranger holding you, huh?" And the boyfriend says, "Hey mom, look, I have a new nanny." You say the word nanny in unison, not because you are psychic, because you knew he was going to say it. You expect the microaggressions from strangers. Thank you. You expect them from friends. That's not true. You never really expect them. But you understand them. You know enough to know it's going to happen. And how's that? But the microaggressions from your own family, that's a surprise. When you're a child and your grandparents call each other wetback and insist you speak English to them so you don't sound like a poor Mexican. When you bring your white husband to parties and your aunts and uncles insist that you serve him and clean up after him, that you get his beer. When your mother lives with you and tells you that no matter what happens you obey your white husband, that it's his home and he is the king. These are always a shock. These microaggressions don't feel expected. You don't know enough to know these are going to happen. You trusted them a bit more. What you expected from them was more. As the brownie raced from your life, as you became less Mexican, holding on to the bouquet of flowers in the middle of your name, you didn't want to admit to yourself that this is part of your heritage. The internalized racism and sexism is a relief to leave behind. You will never say this out loud, but you will feel the relief in your shoulders and back. How am I on time? Okay. My name is Philip Harris. For the first several years of my life, on my mother's side of the family, I was known as Felipe Juan. My first name comes from the Duke of Edinburgh, whom my mother thought looked very distinguished at the wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana the year I was born. My middle name, Juan, comes from my great-uncle, in whose home my parents were married. Felipe Juan, the first grandson on my mother's side. Felipe Juan Harris, the Spanish stopping at my father's name. My earliest memory is the skinned goat. Nana lived in the back house and rented the front house to a couple named Big Jessie and Teresa. I called her Tere for short, and she babysat me from infancy until I went to private school at 4. She and Big Jessie had just arrived in LA from Mexico. One afternoon, Big Jessie backed the red pickup truck down the driveway. I was sitting on the steps on the side entrance to the front house, the red tiles and white plaster cold against my child's skin. From the back of the truck, Big Jessie and some friends pulled a goat out by a rope, tied around its neck onto the newspaper that it had laid out on the cement. With one swipe, Big Jessie slit the goat's throat. Then they tied its hind legs together and strung it from the avocado tree that shaded my entire childhood. As the goat drained, the men skinned it while Tere filled pots and pans with meat. When my father picked me up that afternoon, he told Nana, his mother-in-law, to tell them it's illegal to slaughter animals in suburban Los Angeles neighborhoods. But what they were cooking smelled delicious. Felipe Juan, you've gotten so big. Come here right now, you're in so much trouble. Give your Nana a hug. Stop bothering your brother. Go play with the other kids and stop hanging around the adults. Stop acting like a girl. Be more like the other boys. Why don't you go play sports with the other boys? What your parents must think about you being so different. You should be playing football. You're in so much trouble. The first time I was called faggot was in a church. Holy Trinity, where my parents were not allowed to marry, where my grandmother's funeral would someday be, where I had my first communion. Every Saturday morning at 9 for an hour. Our textbooks were these soft-bound, colorful retellings of the biblical myths. Mine was blue and had Jesus Christ on the cover. Our teacher was a young Chicana named Maria. She had dark hair, a kind face, and long skirts. She told us that dinosaurs didn't exist, that we would go to hell if we didn't do our homework, and that Jesus died so we could be saved from eternal damnation. Before class once, one of the students whom I'd never spoken to turned around the desk in front of me and said to me, "Faggot." After catechism that same morning, my father picked me up in front of Holy Trinity. Maria crossed the street in front of my father's car and waved at me. She smiled and kept walking. My father watched her unlock her car door and get in. "That's my teacher," I said. "Is she cute?" he asked. Another test, another quiet inquisition into whether or not I was gay. "Yes," I said. Lie to survive, lie to be someone else. I have a cousin who was born on the same day. His father and my mother are first cousins twice. That is, my cousin's grandfather was my grandfather's brother, and Nana was his grandmother's sister. My grandmother's sister's name was Eva. She was blind, and when she said hello to you, she felt your face with her soft brown hands. My grandfather's brother's name was Raymond. He could be mean, but was also always happy to see you. My cousin with the same birthday and I only saw each other at family gatherings. Those parties in Compton where trash bags of fresh rolls were set up by folding tables filled with meat and beans and rice and potato salad and macaroni. Those parties where there were 2 coolers, one for the generic brand soda and another for the brand name beer. Those parties where everyone ate at 6 and then again at 10. Those parties where I would feel nervous upon arriving, but then realizing I was related to everyone in the house, relaxed and ended up running through the sprinklers in my underwear. Those parties where the Mexican men told my father that it was my mother's job to serve him, and my mother just laughing and giving them the finger. Nana dancing on the cement in her red pumps, her smile betraying her melancholy. No grass in the yard, just dirt with cinder blocks my uncle sat on to smoke away from the kids. The kitchen filled with women stirring pots and carrying foil trays out back. One of my tias heating tortillas on the gas range, making sure some burnt to a crisp because some people like them that way. The music loud, a mixture of current pop hits during the afternoon, swing music in the evening, and then mariachi when it was dark and everyone started drinking and crying. My cousin, whose birthday is the same day as mine, used to make fun of my name. He would say, "Fill up my cup," or he would say, "Fill her up, Philip." I never understood this joke. The second syllable in my name, if said in English, should be pronounced like the I in icky, not the U in up. Besides, in that house and those parties with that side of my family, my name was Felipe Juan. When I was in private school, during summer school, the principal was sitting in my classroom discussing the new uniforms they were getting for the students. She looked up at me and said, "I think we'll definitely make sure Philip gets one of the dresses with the pleated skirts." A student whose name was John, the white version of my middle name, laughed and said, "Yeah, faggot." They all laughed. After school one day, when I was walking my little brother home, a group of boys caught up with us, and one of them, a Korean boy named Andrew, who's now a missionary in Korea, started shouting, "Faggot!" at me. I tried not to cry and told my little brother not to listen to them. Andrew kept shouting the word long and low, so that it took a few seconds to say. He didn't stop until my brother and I were in our house, Nana watching Oprah, unaware to what had just happened. I stood alone in my bedroom for a minute, telling myself that I was okay, that I had to just keep getting through the day. In junior high French class, Charlie used to hit me in the back of the head with our French book, entitled The Joy of French, and yell, "Faggot," so the class would hear and laugh. The teacher never noticed. When Charlie and I became friends on Facebook when we were adults, I asked him if he remembered doing that, and he said no, but he was sorry. He and his girlfriend are now indie musicians who play shows around Hollywood. Woodland Hills, California. My first day as an editor at a pregnancy magazine, I asked the human resources representative if I can add florist to my last name. "Why?" she asks. "I'm half Mexican. My mother does it and I want my byline to show my heritage." She shakes her head. "Don't ever do that," she says. "Not in magazines, at least. You'll never work again. My last name is actually Hernandez. I'm Mexican. I applied for this job with my actual last name and was turned down. I applied again with my husband's last name, and now I work here." Hollywood, California. A friend and I are sitting in an office building. Across a messy desk is a woman in her mid-50s. She is talking on the phone. She finally hangs up and looks at me. "Sit up," she says. "I can't have you go into calls with your shoulders slouched. So your agency closed?" I nod. She nods back. She looks through my photo book, examining my card. The one with me at 18, in black and white, wearing a white shirt, looking seductively into the camera. The photo I was told would make my modeling career. "Yes, I think we can use you. We're in a bit of a Latin craze right now. You have that Ricky Martin look, so I think, yes, you might be perfect for our modeling agency. I'll let you know." 2 weeks later, a message is left on the family answering machine. "Hello, yes, this message is for Philip. Hi, dear. Wanted to let you know that we'll be passing on you this time. We already have a Hispanic-looking man here at the agency, and we're not really sure how long this Latin thing will last. You all just look so much alike. Anyway, good luck, dear." The picture's provided in the book, just if you want to purchase it. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.